found champions that were willing to fight for me.
Most people might know Nate Smith as the alleged new boyfriend of Savannah Chrisley, the former beauty pageant competitor who won Miss Tennessee Teen USA in 2016 and would go on to be a reality TV star. But Nate has a singer-songwriter who has an incredibly interesting story of his own. He had a pretty unique rise to fame, and you guys will be shocked when you hear how he got to where he is now. Before Nate signed to Sony and started experiencing all kinds of success in the music world, he had a full life. And it definitely wasn't always easy for him. Nate grew up in a small town in California called Paradise, about 72 miles north of Sacramento. Nate always gravitated towards music, even at a young age. He said that he would naturally just play the guitar and constantly annoy his brother with his singing and practicing in the process. He remembers sharing a bunk bed with his brother and bugging him while exploring his new passion. Every musician has to start somewhere, and for Nate it was in a bunk bed with a very annoyed audience of one. Nate knew from a young age that this was his calling, and he said that singing felt as natural to him as breathing. And while other kids were thinking of sports or superheroes, music was always what was on his mind. He knew from the moment he first picked up the guitar that eventually he'd be on a stage. And he was actually pretty significantly influenced at an early age by a country music superstar on television. Nate said that watching Garth Brooks perform live on TV was a pivotal moment in his decision to pursue being a professional musician. He gave credit to Garth and Elvis as the reason he gravitated towards singing at such an early age. But his taste in music eventually developed, and he started listening to an even more eclectic collection of artists. Nate said that there were too many acts to count across rock, pop, and country that he loved and that had informed his love of music. He also gave credit to his father for getting him into classic rock and for all the ways that had changed how he thought about what a song could be. Apparently, when he goes into the studio now, he fuses that knowledge with his ear for bands like Blink-182 and Creed. That might sound like a weird combination, but somehow all of those seemingly contradictory influences converge to help Nate find his own sound, which is pretty cool. When Nate was only 23, he moved to Nashville to pursue his dreams, and it didn't take long for them to start coming true. Nate was able to secure a publishing deal for himself, no minor accomplishment for any hopeful professional musician. But just as it looked like his whole life was transforming into what he had always hoped for, Nate was dealt a tragic personal blow. He made the extraordinarily tough decision to leave his blossoming career behind and go back to his hometown in California. He thought that he was quitting his career once and for all. That must have been a really tough decision for him to make, and I can't imagine that it was easy for him to pack up his bags. But as fate would have it, another tragic moment in his life would be what reignited his spark for chasing a career of singing songs. In 2018, Nate's hometown of Paradise was impacted by a horrible wildfire. It wasn't some kind of distant thing he had heard about on the news. It came right to his front door. Nate said that he sadly lost everything he ever had, including all his guitars. I can't even imagine what that must have been like. Still, Nate counts himself as one of the lucky ones, since he wasn't trapped in his home when it happened. But just when he was at his darkest moment, he was given a ray of light in the form of a gesture from a friend. One of Nate's dear friends sent him a guitar, and the act of kindness was enough to get him to start writing songs again. He drew upon the experience he just had, turning a tragic hardship into beautiful music. Once again, Nate was able to process his immediate influences into something bigger. It's so impressive that his mind can do that. The song he wrote was called One of These Days, and it pretty much changed the trajectory of Nate's life. Nate experienced a TikTok bump and saw his music taking off on the platform. As Nate's music started getting picked up, it led to him doing TV appearances, benefit concerts, and being noticed by the people in Nashville again. He had since become an ICU nurse, but he suddenly found himself spending more and more time on stage and less time at the hospital. He had a hard time understanding what was happening because it all just felt so surreal. As Nate started writing music again and getting noticed, his friends were able to convince him to move back to Nashville and not give up on his dreams. They even created a GoFundMe to help raise money for him, which is so sweet. Sometimes all you need is a little push in the right direction for people you trust who are willing to help you make it happen. According to Nate, when he got to Nashville, he signed a 6-month lease with someone he affectionately called the Cat Lady. Nate said that she was the nicest lady he'd ever met. Nate was able to play a few festivals, and he even got himself a new management deal. By hustling and making sure that he showed the crowd his heart every time he had the opportunity to hit the stage, Nate was able to get his biggest break yet, which was his record deal with Sony Music Nashville. But it came at a moment when Nate was feeling far from successful. Nate said that he only had $14 left in his bank account, which would have been barely enough to buy his album if it came out the day he got signed. The money from his friends had just about run out, and he was running on fumes. If this record deal or some other major opportunity didn't materialize quickly, he was going to have to return to his hometown, having abandoned his dreams for a second time. And he probably wasn't going to ever get a third chance of chasing his hopes of being up on the stage. Nowadays, Nate looks back at it all and says that his life feels like something out of a story. It often doesn't feel real, but he understands that he got a second chance at pursuing the life he always dreamed of, and he's not about to let it go to waste. Now, as a recording artist with a clear path to distributing his music to people worldwide, Nate is finding success by leaning into what he does best. He's able to connect with fans across genres because his own personal taste reflects a fan whose playlist spans genres. Nate can go from listening to pop punk to country to classic rock, and you can feel that in his music. Things seem to be going great for Nate right now. He has a hit record that has saturated country music radio, and he also got added to Thomas Rhett's tour, which is a massive opportunity for him to share his sound with new audiences every night. Sounds like Nate is an all-around good guy who loves music and just wants to play what he likes, which is a product of all his favorite artists and genre. It's terrible that he had experienced a deep tragedy as losing everything he owned to a fire, but the fact that it gave him a new lease on his dreams after feeling so much support from the people closest to him is something that almost as beautiful as his music. And I think a lot of us are very excited about what he might do next. What do you guys think? Was the fire actually a good thing for Nate in a weird way? Do you hear the Blink-182 and Creed influences in his songs? What's your favorite song of his?